as I sit here with you now, there are multiple states which are gearing up over the course of 2026 and 2027 to join in direct partnership with Texas to make Ibogaine a reality in America.
And that's amazing. If I had an audience here, I'd say we need to clap that up.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, I
Come on,
mean,
guys.
people, on my previous episode that I had Angela here and another guest, a firefighter who used the treatment and talks about how it saved his life. People don't realize we are all. If you could throw a rock, we all have someone we love, we know, who is suffering from addiction, who's suffering from PTSD, who's suffering from fill in the blank, that this could help. This can literally save lives over and over and over again. And to your point, because of a political conversation in the 1960s, it's not been allowed, to be researched any further. So, you speak to some of these other states that are now going to step in and help. What does that process look like? Say all of these states in 2026 follow Texas. And we now have multiple states willing to give, maybe not the $50 million, because as you said, that's, unheard of for psychedelic research, but maybe they all start adding money to the cause. Do we band together? Is it each individual state? What does the process look like from here so that those of us living in Texas who might really want to have access or have someone we want to get help for, or there are, people like my dad, we spoke to that, he runs a treatment center. They want to start, incorporating this medicine into their treatment, things like that. How does that process look? What is that? Where do we go from here?
Each state legislature will appropriate funds to fund the expansion of the clinical trial that will begin into Texas, into their borders. So we're going to use Mississippi as an example.
Okay.
On August the 28th, I and about a half a dozen others traveled to Jackson, Mississippi, and delivered testimony to their state legislature's Joint Public Health Committee on this very subject. It was a remarkable gathering, especially considering that Mississippi is widely considered to be probably the most conservative by every measure state in the country. Mm-hmm. And to deliver testimony about the breakthrough therapeutic potentials of a psychedelic on the floor of that Capitol was remarkable. Mm-hmm. And illustrates the opportunity that is at hand. If Mississippi decides to join Texas, they would pass an appropriations bill, and that appropriations bill would probably provide several millions of dollars to fund, for instance, the Ole Miss Medical Center to host the clinical trial with partnership of the drug developer that would be selected in Texas to conduct that trial. For your audience, any time that a drug is developed, you have to have a developer who has the necessary subject matter expertise and financial resources to engage in the science that's necessary to first test on animals, test on healthy humans, and then to determine whether it is an effective and safe medication for the condition it's being developed. This is the process that we have, and this is the process that we've got to follow. So when Texas selects its developer, that developer will start a single trial, one trial, through which this drug will be tested for opioid use disorder and co-occurring substance use disorder. Anytime a drug developer conducts a trial, it must be geographically and demographically diverse, because you want to make sure that you are demonstrating efficacy across all walks of life, and that there isn't some peculiar biological reality within any segment of American society that would create a deleterious impact or a special risk for an individual population. So by virtue of an FDA drug development trial, it has to be in multiple states. Those states must be diverse. So by virtue of Mississippi putting forward Mississippi money to fund a Mississippi facility to host the drug developer that will initially be chosen in Texas to expand out that trial, we are killing two birds with one stone in terms of expanding the scope, scale, and speed of the trial, while also making sure that we fit the FDA's requirements of geographic and demographic diversity. And I believe in 2026, Mississippi will probably be one of 6 states where this kind of legislation will be brought to the floor for consideration.
The Mississippi legislators are very committed to this process, and we've actually given them 343 guys that have gone through to testify.
Nice.
And one
and
already
they're from Mississippi? Or that you just took them there? Yeah.
One was retired out of North Carolina, lives in Florida now, but he had great results with a traumatic brain injury, pre and post Ibogaine. I was down with him on his journey the end of June. He wrote down pre and post journey what had happened for him. We knew he had a TBI. He'd get hit in the face with a brick during a riot. He was a SWAT officer in Charlotte, and he was suffering greatly. On his list, he said he hated humanity.
Wow.
He was living a victim of this traumatic brain injury. He was also on a CPAP machine because he had major breathing issues from getting hit so hard in the face.
Right.
He had a post-journey scan. I asked him if he and I could split a post-journey scan because I was so interested in seeing what happened to his TBI. His TBI is greatly resolved.
Yeah.
It's not completely resolved, but
Just diminished. Smaller.
Yeah, when you see on paper,
side by side.
yeah,
sure.
and he's telling you this is how I felt when I wanted to die, and now he loves life.
Yeah.
And he says he feels he's been restored to the way that he felt pre-police work.
Wow.
So if you're not wanting to give that gift to a first responder, if you're not wanting to give that gift, to a veteran or to a human, you're simply just not for humanity at this point.
Sure.
So.
Sure.
And even
so,
the limited studies that are out there now have shown such huge results. And we already know, like Bryan's talking about, they're going to do this with an opioid crisis. We already know what this does to an opioid crisis.
Right.
So all that's in the way is just a proper study so that people can
sure.
see
red
the
tape.
power
The
of
red
this.
tape. Sure.
Yeah.
To make it a
Now,
medicine available.
I feel like it's important for people to understand, though, how this gets doled out and whatnot
Right. You're not buying it like Tylenol at CVS.
It also
when
has
it's-
nothing to
yeah.
do with Bryan Hubbard and Americans for Ibogaine or any of the entities that are helping push this along. Like, everybody's doing their job. Service providers are providing the medicine. Integration people are providing integration. Lobbyists are providing that. So people are staying in their lane. They're taking it as far as they need to go, and it's up to our individual governments
State governments, right.
to figure out how they're appropriating this to their populations. But we're still at the red tape step.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah. And so if you're someone or someone who, maybe for whatever reason, maybe they're not a first responder and they can't get in through 343 and they want to do something like Ambio, but they can't afford it, or for whatever reason, they can't take a week to go down to Mexico, or there's a wait list, or whatever the case may be, and they want to be part of the study when that time comes. Is that going to be something where, hey, you want to get clean, you want to get sober, you have addiction problems, that you can't do it on your own? Is that a process that's going to be available to the masses? Is that something where, the scientist will handpick them? How does that process work?
Anytime you have an FDA clinical trial for medication development, you have to recruit clinical trial participants. So this is not a process, unfortunately, that will result in the swinging of the door wide to everyone who has an addiction issue. What it is going to provide is an opportunity for individuals with an addiction issue to volunteer to be a subject to the study and to be a clinical trial participant to test, does it work? Is it safe? And in fact, I've reversed those questions. Is it safe? Does it work? And this is all part of what the FDA's ostensible purpose is, which is to make sure that any medication that makes its way into the hands of an individual through a healthcare facility or the physician pad is safe and works. Now, we can debate, there's ample evidence
hold on.
to suggest that the FDA has not necessarily, has not conformed
somewhere
to what that purpose is. But this gets into the broader reality that this project is illustrating. We have gone far afield from the integrity of intent with which so many of our governmental systems have been established. We have seen the broad-based devolution of America's civic health for at least the past 30 years. And what this project gives us is an opportunity to start cleaning some filth out, and to the extent it can't be cleaned, it shall be exposed.
I guess that's my concern, right? Is like, I would sign up for the study because I know it works. I've met people who've done it and I know it works. My fear for, and maybe y'all are finding the right people to be partners with this, is, the medical company signs up, they get with Ole Miss, they do this, they find true addicts, they do the study, and it does work. We have the brain scans that show here's the brain before, here's the brain after. We see physical changes in the brain. It's working, and there are a lot of people with a lot of money out there that stand to lose when that happens. So how are they going to overcome that? And is it?
That's why we have the public dollar at play. If you leave something like this in the hands of purely private capital markets, the possibility that you are eliminating here becomes very real. The necessity of bringing the public dollar to bear is to exercise the sort of authority over the project which will ensure that if successful and complete, it is available. It has to be both. It has to be successfully demonstrated, it has to be completed in terms of the process, and then it has to be deployed throughout the society and integrated into the medical system. There is a story that I heard a gentleman tell who worked for a pharmaceutical company that had developed a tremendously effective treatment for a specific variety of solid cancer tumor to the tune of like 90% efficacy. You administer it and it went away. And they shelved the drug precisely because it was effective.
Right.
Now, this was a private company, privately held, privately funded. And those things very well may likely and probably do happen pretty often. Suboxone was created with $62.5 million of public money. No one has any problem getting it, whether it's at a clinic or whether it's out here on the street. Now, we don't ever want Ibogaine to be available on the street because it's dangerous.
Sure.
It has to be administered in a clinically controlled medical setting. But if we can build a recovery infrastructure from sea to Vitamin C and do things like pump 110 million doses of Suboxone into Kentucky over 5 years to a Medicaid population of 1.6 million people and make sure that there's a Suboxone clinic in every community that is poor, that also happens to have, poor white folks and poor black folks, and that it is universally accessible, we can make Ibogaine universally accessible.